Did you know there are people in the world more talented than the best singers, dancers, and actors? There are people in the world who are smarter than Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, but one thing these people don't have is discipline. You see, you can be naturally gifted, but if you don't have the discipline to refine those gifts and become an expert, you'll never prosper. Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace, was and still is considered one of the greatest athletes of our generation, not just because he was a naturally gifted basketball player, but because of his relentless work ethic and unstoppable mindset. In 2016, he accepted the Icon Award at the ESPYs and gave a powerful speech in front of his fellow athletes. One of the things he said was that he didn't get to where he was because of his talent, but because he woke up at 4 a.m. every morning. He had a dream, and he was persistent in ensuring that it became his reality. But he had to make many sacrifices for it, and one of those sacrifices involved waking up at 4 a.m. to practice. Kobe Bryant was known as one of the greatest athletes of all time because of his dedication to his dream. When we look at successful people, we're looking at a finished product. What we don't see are the years of blood, sweat, and tears it took to build a foundation strong enough to hold the weight of such a powerful vision. We see the glitter, the gold, the glamour, the mansions, cars, designer clothes, gold medals, and sold-out concerts. But what we don't see is the work that goes into it. And that's what most people are not prepared to do. In order to become successful, you've got to develop some very uncomfortable habits. You've got to outwork everyone else, and you've got to outwork yourself. In his book, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, author Tom Corley studied the daily habits of 233 millionaires. But he didn't stop there. He also studied the habits of 128 people who earn less than $35,000 per year. And what he found was that your habits will determine whether or not you succeed in life. Let's take a look at the good habits of highly successful people and the bad habits that are keeping you at the bottom of the totem pole. Wealthy people are early risers. Approximately 50% of the millionaires in Corley's study woke up at least 3 hours before their workday began. Most of them spent that time exercising, planning the day ahead, or tackling personal projects. Corley states that waking up at 5 a.m. to get the most important things on your to-do list out of the way gives you control over your life. It provides you with a sense of confidence that you are, in fact, the captain of your ship. Wealthy people read books. 80% of the respondents in Corley's research said that they spent at least 30 minutes a day on self-improvement by reading. Wealthy people don't read for entertainment purposes, but to educate themselves. They prefer reading books on personal development, biographies, and history. Self-made billionaire Warren Buffett says he spends approximately 6 hours per day reading, and that it's been the most important habit he's developed. Wealthy people exercise. Studies have found that exercise gives you mental clarity and improves your motivation. Corley reports that 76% of the respondents in his research spent at least 30 minutes a day engaging in aerobic exercise such as walking, biking, or jogging. Many successful business leaders make time to work out every day. For example, Richard Branson wakes up at 5 a.m., goes cycling, or plays tennis. He states that adding exercise to his routine has maximized his productivity. Wealthy people are thinkers. Wealthy people spend 15 to 30 minutes per day thinking. Corley discovered that they think in isolation as a part of their morning routine. This time is spent processing everything that's going on in their lives and strategizing for future events. They reflect on their personal relationships, their health, and their careers. According to research, having quiet time to evaluate your thoughts is linked to stress reduction. Wealthy people pursue their goals. Success is not an accident. Wealthy people make a plan to get rich and then take the action required to make it happen. Corley found that 80% of the wealthy people in his study were obsessed with pursuing and achieving their goals. They evaluated their long and short-term goals daily. Unbeknownst to many of us, the majority of people spend their lives fulfilling other people's dreams. Climbing up the corporate ladder only benefits the owner of that company. Wealthy people put a ladder up against their own wall and climb to the top of their own castle. Wealthy people spend time being inspired. Successful people make a point of limiting their exposure to toxic, negative individuals who drain their energy and stunt their motivation. Corley found that the wealthy people in his study connected with people who inspired them to achieve their goals and to remain on the path of continuous improvement. Wealthy people have more than one stream of income. Wealthy people generally have more than one source of income. Corley found that prior to making their first $1 million, respondents had at least 3 streams of income, such as real estate or other investments. It's important to have multiple sources of income because the economy is not always going to be stable. You can lose a job the moment your company goes bust. If you own your own company, you can lose that income if there's no longer a demand for your products or services. Therefore, the most effective way to stay ahead of the game is to have multiple sources of income. Wealthy people get enough sleep. Sleep is important because it rejuvenates the body. Albert Einstein said that he got at least 10 hours of sleep a night. The assumption is that rich people don't sleep. Instead, they spend every last hour of their day on money-making endeavors. Corley found the opposite to be true. A whopping 89% of the wealthy people in his study got 7 or more hours of sleep a night. Research suggests that sleep is essential to success because it affects creative thinking and memory function. Wealthy people value their time. The most important asset in the world is time. You can re-earn lost money. You can get your health back if you fall ill. You can buy another house if it gets repossessed. But time is one thing you can never buy back, which is why wealthy people value it so much. Corley found that wealthy people don't waste their time scrolling through social media or binge watching programs on Netflix. They also avoid people who waste their time. I am very intentional about who I choose to spend my time with, even family members. The way I see it, if people are not adding to your life, they're taking from it. And if you want to achieve your goals, you can't afford to associate with people who feel they've got the right to monopolize your time with foolishness. Now, let's take a look at the habits of the men and women in Corley's study who earn less than $35,000 per year. He referred to them as poverty habits. Here are some of them. Remaining in your comfort zone. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Becoming successful is the most uncomfortable thing you'll ever do. If you want to achieve your goals, you'll need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Corley found that poor people like to blend in. They want to be accepted, and they don't like standing out from the crowd. But the inability to separate yourself from the masses is one of the main reasons people don't achieve anything. The average person enjoys being in familiar surroundings, and they don't like leaving their comfort zone. In contrast, wealthy people enjoy uncertainty. That's where they find comfort because that's the place of unlimited potential. To become wealthy, you've got to take risks, and most people are not willing to do that. Job dissatisfaction. Poor people generally hate their jobs, but because of the perceived security a job provides, they remain in employment they feel dissatisfied with. Leaving your house every morning to go to a job you can't stand will cause you to become frustrated, stressed, and unsatisfied with life. Ultimately, it will affect your chances of becoming wealthy because you won't have the energy to do anything other than work in a job that makes you miserable and complain about it. Successful people chase their passions and that's where they get the most satisfaction. Passion is more important than skills, intelligence, and education because that's what drives you. Getting out of bed in the morning becomes exciting when you look forward to the work you're doing. Spending too much. Poor people don't have any financial discipline. They acquire liabilities instead of assets. 95% of the people in Corley's study had no savings, and they had massive debts because they refused to live within their means. As a result, they had no money to send their children to college, for retirement, or to pursue the opportunities that could improve their financial situation. Spending more money than you earn creates an endless cycle of poverty. Avoiding feedback. Poor people don't like constructive criticism because it requires self-evaluation. It goes back to staying in your comfort zone. When a manager, mentor, or friend gives you feedback, it means you've got to take action and make the necessary improvements to get on track. Making improvements in any area of your life means stepping outside your comfort zone, and the average person wants to remain comfortable. Procrastination. There's no denying that everyone procrastinates on tasks they don't enjoy, but poor people spend way too much time procrastinating. Corley states that procrastination prevents some of the most talented people from becoming successful. Additionally, according to best-selling author Napoleon Hill, wealthy people make decisions quickly. They follow their instincts. If it feels right, they run with it, and if not, they look for another option. Procrastination is one of the main reasons that people struggle financially. It ruins your credibility with employers and work colleagues when you rush to get work done at the last minute, and it affects the quality of your output. Negative thinking. Again, negative thinking is something that we all experience, no matter how wealthy we might be. The difference between the rich and the poor is that the rich don't let it define them, and they don't allow it to stop them from getting things done. They quickly reframe their thoughts and keep things moving. On the other hand, poor people are driven by their negative thinking. They won't apply for promotions, start a business, or look for a higher paying job because they've convinced themselves they are incapable. Watching too much television. 77% of the poor people in Corley's study spent over 1 hour each day watching TV. On the other hand, 66% of the millionaires in his study spent less than 1 hour a day watching television. He concluded that the poor prefer to be entertained than educated, whereas the rich prefer to be educated instead of entertained. One of the hallmarks of self-made millionaires is the productive use of their time. Associating with negative people. 86% of the wealthy people who took part in Corley's research made a habit of associating with people who were just as driven and motivated as them. When you associate with people who are constantly striving to achieve their goals and become the best versions of themselves, you have no time to be toxic and negative. However, only 4% of the poor people in Corley's study associated with people who directed their energy towards success and positivity. 96% associated with negative, toxic individuals. Drinking too much alcohol. There's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol. The occasional beer or glass of wine isn't going to hurt. But 54% of the poor people in Corley's study drank more than 2 glasses of alcohol per day. 84% of the millionaires drank less than 2 glasses of alcohol per day. Researchers found that too much alcohol has a negative effect on your memory and it clouds your judgment. Unhealthy eating. 90% of the poor people in Corley's study ate more than 300 calories from junk food every day. 69% ate takeaway more than 3 times per week. 69% ate candy more than 3 times a week, and 66% of the participants were at least 30 pounds overweight. Wealthy people invest in their health by eating the right foods and doing regular exercise. A healthy diet not only helps you keep the weight off, it gives you more energy and boosts your brain power. Gambling. People gamble and play the lottery because they want to make quick money. But getting rich quick is rare, and the people who do tend to lose the money just as quickly as they made it. Financial success requires relentless effort, initiative, and time. People who gamble have convinced themselves that it's a shortcut to wealth. In Corley's study, he found that 77% of poor people played the lottery every week, and 52% gambled on sports at least once a week. In comparison, 94% of rich people didn't play the lottery, and 84% didn't gamble on sports. Instead of relying on get-rich-quick schemes, wealthy people rely on developing the habit of chasing their dreams. It's also important to mention that having the discipline to achieve your goals isn't enough. You've also got to have the discipline to maintain your goals. There are plenty of people who achieved a measure of success and lost it because they became complacent and undisciplined once they got to the top. Today, my life might look easier than it did 10 years ago, but I now work harder to maintain what I've got. That's why the habits mentioned above must become a lifestyle and not just a stepping stone to success. How to develop self-discipline. You've just heard about the difference between the habits of the rich and the poor. The main difference between these two groups is self-discipline. In reality, everyone is disciplined to a degree, but some people are just disciplined in the wrong things. The poor person has developed a habit of sitting in front of the TV every night, while the rich person has developed a habit of reading a book or exercising. The question is, how do you become disciplined in the right things? First, let's define self-discipline. What is self-discipline? In short, it's the ability to do what you know you need to do when you don't feel like doing it. Self-discipline is about drive, determination, resolve, willpower, self-regulation, and self-control. As far as I'm concerned, it's the superpower that trumps all superpowers, because without self-discipline, all other superpowers are ineffective. All experts stress the importance of self-discipline. It's the most important ingredient in anything you want to do, whether you want to improve your relationships, manage your emotions better, be more positive, get promoted, procrastinate less, be more productive, spend less, exercise more, eat better, or lose weight. There are several benefits to self-discipline. Here are some of them. It helps you control your emotions. When you get angry, upset, or frustrated, your first instinct is to react to how you're feeling. But that's not a good idea. Anger is a powerful emotion, and even the most unlikely people have killed because of it. I know that I've said some pretty terrible things when I've been angry. Unfortunately, once those words are released, you can't take them back. When you're self-disciplined, you can control your emotions better. Doesn't mean you're not going to feel angry, upset, or frustrated, but it does mean you'll be more likely to process your emotions before reacting to them. In this way, you're able to respond more appropriately to the situation. Improved financial health. Despite the fact that I was earning $200,000 per year, I was always broke. Why? Because I had no self-discipline. I spent money like I had a never-ending stream of it running through my bank account. Meals out cost $300. I booked weekends away and blew $5,000 in 2 days. I bought the most expensive suits, my spending was out of control, and I found it very difficult to get my finances in order. We all know that spending money feels good. Buying those new shiny items is always pleasurable, but living within your means, saving for a rainy day, and planning for the future will be of more benefit to you in the long run. I didn't like the idea of financial discipline. I assumed it meant I had to live like a pauper and put total restrictions on my life. But it wasn't as bad as I thought. I just had to get into the habit of sticking to a budget and saving a percentage of my salary every month. It sounds simple, but when you're used to blowing thousands in one go, you're going to struggle. Although I did get some satisfaction out of the fact that I knew I could afford what I really wanted, but I was choosing not to indulge. It was also really satisfying to see money piling up in my bank account. You'll have fewer regrets. This is connected to controlling your emotions. When you don't have any self-discipline, you make bad choices. You don't think before you speak, which means you're more likely to blurt out something embarrassing at the wrong time. Instead, you'll spend time gathering all the necessary information before making a decision, which means you won't make choices based on your opinion or emotion, but on facts. Success in your field. Whether you're a student or an investment banker, like I was, success in any area requires hard work. When you're not self-disciplined, you'll never reach your highest potential. It's impossible. Becoming the best version of yourself requires extreme discipline. I always did the bare minimum and got away with it because I was naturally intelligent, but I could have gone a lot further in my field if I had put the work in. At the time, I didn't think I needed to, and I wasn't willing to do it, but that's not how people get recognized in their field. I was one of those people who would turn my nose up at employees who got promoted ahead of me. I could never understand it. I assumed my qualifications were enough. But the people who got promoted were the ones who were always on time for work, stayed after hours, and took the necessary courses to improve their skills. That type of work ethic requires discipline, and it will get you noticed. Improved relationships. I was the most unreliable person in my family. If I said I'd be there at 6 p.m., I'd arrive at 8 p.m. If I said I'd call at 12 noon, I'd call at 2 p.m. I just couldn't stick to anything, and it really rubbed people the wrong way. I knew I was unreliable, and I didn't think about it until I started doing it to my mentor, and he pulled me up on it. Mike had me put myself in the shoes of the people I was always letting down. When I thought about it like that, I realized how badly I'd disappointed people. It was a running joke that I was untrustworthy. We all laughed about it. But even though my family had just learned to accept it, deep down it bothered them. I found this out when we had a heart-to-heart after I decided to get my life on track. To begin with, they didn't believe I was going to change, and they had every right not to. It was up to me to prove myself, because I'd let them down so many times. There were definitely a few bumps along the road, but I got there in the end, and today, they know my word is my bond. The assumption is that self-discipline is an innate characteristic that some people have and others don't. That's not the case. It's learned behavior. I know this to be true from my own personal experience. My parents spoke about it all the time, but they didn't model it because they didn't know how. I was basically trained to do the bare minimum. I didn't tap into my highest potential until I was in my late 30s. My mentor taught me about the importance of self-discipline and how to develop it. So here are some tips. Motivate yourself. Have you ever noticed that when you're excited about something, you don't struggle to achieve it? You just get on with it because you're passionate, energetic, and enthusiastic about it. Let's say you've got a vacation coming up and you know you want to look good in your bikini or swimming trunks, so you set yourself a weight loss goal. You fly out of bed at 5 a.m. when the alarm goes off. You guzzle down gallons of water as if it were your favorite soda, and you feast on that salad as if it were a Big Mac. Motivation is the reason we do things. The power of why is a concept that's spoken about by leadership expert Simon Sinek. When you have a clear understanding of why you want to achieve something, you're more likely to stay focused and achieve it. Before you start on your journey of building better habits, tap into your why. I wanted to develop better habits because I wanted more out of life for myself and my future family. I also had a deep desire to help other people, but I didn't feel that I was in a position to do so because I was still struggling myself. Once I had identified my why, putting what I was learning into practice became a lot easier. Develop a morning routine. In his book, The Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod says that the way you start your day has a major impact on your success in life. A focused and productive morning leads to a focused and productive day. The more productive you are, the more you get done. But most people don't have focused and productive mornings. They hit the snooze button over and over again so that they have just enough time to take a shower and get dressed. Then they stop off at McDonald's or Starbucks for breakfast, so they've got just enough energy to make it until lunch. They grab a pizza for lunch and then rush home after work to eat another unhealthy meal while they sit in front of the TV. How can you expect to achieve your goals when you live like this? Hal Elrod wrote his book because that was how he lived his life until he developed the habit of a morning routine. He went from being terribly depressed, broke, and unhealthy to being an international keynote speaker, a successful businessman, an ultra-marathon runner, and a best-selling author. He has now transformed the lives of thousands of others by teaching them about the importance of developing the habit of a morning routine. There are 6 variables in Hal's morning equation: silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Together, they form the acronym SAVERS. He put them together after evaluating the lives of the most successful and productive people in the world. Of course, you can make changes to the equation, but use Hal's method as a template. Try out different things and see what works best for you. I can say with confidence that one of the most important keys to success is your morning routine. I've personally developed the following morning habits: meditation for 10 minutes, a 30-minute run, a cold shower, reading for 15 minutes, and I do this every morning. I must admit, it took several months to develop the habit, but I got there in the end. My aim was to get to 90 days straight, because according to research, once you repeat something for 90 days in a row, it becomes a lifestyle. I broke the 90 days into 10 days at a time. If I fell off, which I did often, I'd have to go back to day 1. I'll never forget when I made it to 90 days. Something clicked in me. I just knew my life was about to change. And it most certainly did from that day forwards. Get rid of temptations. My guilty pleasure was TV. After a long, hard day at work, I felt that I deserved to sit in front of the soapbox for a few hours. The problem was that I did this every night and on the weekends. Every time I said I was going to work on my book or my online financial management course, I'd watch TV instead. This went on for weeks. I kept promising myself that I would only watch one show, but that one show turned into 2, then 3, then it was time to go to bed, and I would promise myself I'd get it done the next day, but the next day never came. In the end, I took the television off the wall and gave it to my brother. I motivated myself by agreeing to get another TV when I'd achieved a certain level of success. A study conducted by Cornell University found that our choices are affected by our environment. They discovered that women who kept a box of cereal on the counter were an average of 20 pounds heavier than those who didn't. Also, women who kept soft drinks on their counter were an average of 24 to 26 pounds heavier than the women who didn't. Finally, women who kept fruit on their counter were an average of 13 pounds lighter than the women who didn't. In other words, if your goal is to lose weight, don't have junk food anywhere near you. If you've got a deadline to meet and you find it difficult to work from home, go to the library or stay at work for an extra couple of hours. Don't waste your time trying to fight the temptations in your environment. Just remove them or remove yourself. Set yourself a deadline, challenge, or goal. When 1 year had passed and I hadn't written my book or finished the financial management course that should have taken me 3 months to complete, I decided that enough was enough. I was going to finish it within a month, and that was the end of the discussion. It was May 2nd. I called my mentor and told him that if I hadn't graduated from the class by June 2nd, I would owe him $1,000. It was tight, but I could do it if I put my mind to it. And besides, I really didn't want to pay out $1,000. I went to the 24-hour library every day for 26 days in a row, and I did it. I finished the course before the deadline I'd set for myself. If you want to get something done, set a deadline, challenge, or goal, and get on with it. Do the most difficult things first. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about getting the most difficult and important tasks out of the way first. The reason being is that we only have a certain amount of willpower, and as the day goes on, we become less focused. Have you ever noticed how productive you are during the first 3 or 4 hours at work? And by 2 p.m., you're yawning, going for toilet breaks every 20 minutes, and checking your watch constantly? When you get the most difficult things done first, you increase your chances of completing your to-do list because it doesn't take much willpower to do the small things. The problem with small tasks is that even though they don't take a lot of willpower, they can take a lot of time, which means when you do them first, you are less productive on the difficult task, and it'll take you a lot longer to complete. Embrace failure. What the hell does embracing failure have to do with self-discipline? I hear you asking. The answer is everything. Fear is paralyzing, and it will stop you from moving before you've even taken the first step. One of the acronyms for fear is false evidence appearing real. In other words, you've made up a scenario in your head and spent so much time thinking about it, you've convinced yourself it's real. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 75% of people rank public speaking as their number one fear. In other words, people fear speaking in front of an audience more than they fear death. That's insane. I once fell into this percentage, but the kicker was that I'd never spoken in front of anyone before. So how did I know I wouldn't be good at it? Because the idea of speaking in front of a group of people didn't sit well with me, I made up all types of scenarios in my head. What if I forgot what I was going to say? What if I had sweat patches? What if the audience thought I was an idiot? And so on and so on. When I finally plucked up the courage to speak in public, I realized my fears were unfounded. I was nervous, but I did a good job. In fact, I got a standing ovation. So, why should we embrace failure? Because your fear of it is not based on experience. You learn more from failure than you do from success. There are some life principles you'll learn in the gutter that you'll never have access to on the mountaintop. Failure teaches you what not to do. As long as you don't give up when you fail, failure will always act as a guiding light. Still not convinced that you should embrace failure? Let me tell you a story about my favorite motivational speaker, Les Brown. One of his life goals was to buy his adoptive mother a house. When he finally made enough for a deposit, he went looking for the perfect home, and he found it. He was so excited to move her from her roach-infested apartment into a mansion, but No sooner had he signed the papers and handed over the money than he received a foreclosure notice because the previous owner had taken on a loan on the house and not paid it back. He had to pay $30,000 within 30 days or the bank would take the house. He wasn't able to raise that money, and he was forced to move his mother back into the roach-infested apartment he'd just moved her out of. This was Brown's first house, and in his haste to move in, he'd failed to do a title check. If he had, he would have found out that there was a debt on the house. The good news is that 90 days later, Brown made enough money to move his mother into a bigger and better home. Why? Because he embraced failure. He accepted that he'd made a mistake. He learned from it, brushed himself off, and focused on his goal of buying his mother a house, and that's what he did. There are plenty more examples of people who have failed and gone on to have massive success. But the moral of the story is that failure is only the end if you decide that it's going to be. Self-discipline covers many areas, and one of them is thinking. According to James Geary, we are what we think. And if you want to develop good habits, your thought process needs to be in alignment with what you want. You'll learn more about this in Chapter 3.